Hey guys, red and black greetings. This is Flamengo. Welcome to the Paparazzo Rubro Negro channel. If you're new here, I invite you to follow, like, and share on all platforms. If you're on YouTube, I invite you to subscribe down below. Turn on the bell notification and leave that awesome like on the video. So, my friends, the situation involving Danilo, we're going to bring you updates on that right now, okay? According to ESPN, we also heard from Flamengo earlier, and we had brought a source connected to the board saying that Flamengo wouldn't get into a bidding war. Palmeiras also says they won't get into a bidding war, but there's some new information, right? Yeah, from ESPN, which shows that the deal might have leaned more to one side. Only if he stays in Brazil, which would mean Palmeiras and Flamengo. So, they're going to focus on signing a winger and a striker to be a substitute for Pedro. If Pedro can't play, right, to have an option for Pedro, not just when he can't play, but to have an option so Pedro doesn't have to adapt, a player. I've already told you that Flamengo understands they made a mistake by negotiating. Juninho, who didn't get a chance, is doing great over in Mexico. He didn't get a chance here, so at Flamengo, he didn't get a chance. He didn't get enough minutes. He didn't have the opportunity to show what he can do. Now, we're here bringing you some important information. I just want to remind you that you can secure your spot at Flamengo's games. I always tell you that you can secure your spot at Flamengo's games with Caravana do Haroldo, Caravana do Haroldo. Since 1981, taking Flamengo fans and members to games all over Brazil and the world. He took the crowd to the 1981 Club World Cup, to many world championships, to many World Cups, right? Whether it's club tournaments or the World Cup for national teams, yeah. You can be there for the Champions League. You can travel wherever you want, trips to watch NBA games, whatever you want. You can arrange it with the Caravana do Arão crew, Haroldo. And do you want to lose weight in a healthy way? It's at Mais Cabelo. The Mais Slim program from Mais Cabelo helps you lose weight. Look, with medical supervision and without hair loss. And another important thing, right? Mais Cabelo is everywhere in Brazil, so I always leave the QR code here for you to take advantage of the My Slim program discount. And there's also the link for EXO in the description, which is the hair treatment, and it's amazing. Yeah, man, my hair is looking great. It's crazy. It's getting really good. Well, let's bring some important information here, right? We got the news that came out since yesterday, due to risk of injury, the World Cup project and interest from Palmeiras and Flamengo, Botafogo pulled the player out of the match against Corinthians, right? And we know that he's a player that especially Palmeiras would like to bring back, a player from there, right? That they would like to bring back. We know that he's in great form, right? Since he returned to Brazil, he's been in great form at Botafogo. Brazilian national team, right? He's been getting a lot of praise, actually. Danilo is being highly praised by the whole press, by the fans, right? By everyone. We actually have the call-up happening right now, right? 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm recording this video here as I'm heading to TV Connect here in the United States, where I'll react live, and we're bringing you this news. So you can follow the call-up on our social media and all that, yeah, we're bringing you the information first, especially about Flamengo and everything else. So guys, about Danilo, right? His departure from Botafogo is pretty much certain according to GA, okay? So after the World Cup, will he leave Botafogo? If it's certain, it still leaves open the possibility of him staying in Brazilian football. Yeah, and we know that Flamengo and Palmeiras are interested. And here's the new update I wanted to bring you now. One thing is that Palmeiras will spare no effort to sign Danilo. They will, they are. I'd already told you Flamengo had even offered some players like Cebolinha and others, but Botafogo wasn't interested. They only wanted money and were asking for a high amount, 40 million euros. That's a lot of money just to solve their problems, right? They want to solve their problems. Botafogo wants to solve their problems. And on top of that, right? Sell, bring cash into the club, that's good money, right? And they don't want to help Flamengo. Obviously, they don't want to help. Flamengo is a direct rival in Rio de Janeiro, but Cebolinha is a good player. Flamengo could work something out too. You have to know if the player wants it too, but Botafogo prefers money, right? Botafogo is dealing with their staff issue, figuring out who's going to be in charge. They're dealing with renegotiation, legal matters, all that stuff, and they can't even get another transfer ban on top of this transfer ban. So, my friends, that's the situation with Botafogo. Botafogo is trying to recover and will need to sell some important players. They've already negotiated Barbosa with Palmeiras itself, so they already have an interesting relationship with Palmeiras. Palmeiras already has that advantage. And the information we've received here is already coming out in some media outlets. Also, Palmeiras might negotiate players from their squad with Botafogo to get Danilo after the World Cup. In other words, besides the money, Palmeiras will offer some players to Botafogo. Palmeiras, man, they really want Danilo. They want Luis Henrique, right? But I think it's very hard for Zenit to let him go, Luis Henrique. I think it's hard for him to come back to Brazilian football. He's highly valued. I only see Luis Henrique going to Europe now. Yeah. Leaving Russia to play in Europe in some top league club. Now Danilo too. I think Danilo's natural path is also Europe. Now Palmeiras needs to see which players they are going to offer, right? I told you guys that Flamengo also tried, right? To include some players in the deal. Flamengo could put Alisson in, right? Alisson, a player who was going to leave Flamengo for 10 million euros. Yeah, Alassian Cebolinha. Flamengo could put together an interesting deal there, offering some players to Botafogo and some money too, right? Yeah, so we know that Palmeiras has this desire because he's a former Palmeiras player, so they really want him, okay? And then the information that just came out, Planeta do Futebol published it, including the news from ESPN, right? The news came out about an hour ago while I'm recording this. Flamengo made contact, actually started negotiating, got in touch with Botafogo's management. Flamengo tried to negotiate the signing of Danilo, okay? But Palmeiras is letting everyone know, right? Palmeiras said they will match any offer from Flamengo. In other words, Palmeiras doesn't want to accept the possible loss of Danilo, right? The former Palmeiras player to Flamengo. So, Palmeiras will do everything they can to not only disrupt the deal, but also to make sure they sign Danilo, okay? Leila Pereira, according to information from ESPN, Leila Pereira. As soon as she found out that Flamengo wanted to sign Danilo and was making contacts with Botafogo to sign him, Leila Pereira made the decision not to let that happen and to spare no effort to sign the Botafogo defensive midfielder. Right, and a Brazil international, okay? So, the information is, a few weeks ago, okay? According to ESPN, Flamengo approached the midfielder's staff and even put some numbers on the table, okay? As soon as she heard about Flamengo's move, then Leila Pereira, president of Palmeiras, took the lead and said she would match any offer. She hates losing to Flamengo in any way. She even gets desperate and refuses to lose negotiations with them. So, would she match any offer from Brazilian clubs for Danilo? With that, Flamengo is out of the picture. According to ESPN, Flamengo has already given up. Flamengo is no longer trying to sign Danilo. That's not what sources close to the board are saying. They say they're waiting for an opportunity in case Flamengo manages to reach a certain amount, okay? That's not what they told us. ESPN says Flamengo is already out of the picture, okay? That Flamengo is already out of the picture. With this situation involving Palmeiras, they're offering other players, and Leila is saying she'll match any offer. Because earlier information was that Palmeiras wouldn't enter a bidding war. Palmeiras wouldn't agree to pay what Botafogo was asking. Then, the earlier information, I saw some outlets saying that Flamengo... O Flamengo... Previously, Botafogo's only option was to sell in Brazil since Palmeiras wouldn't top the offer. Now ESPN says Palmeiras is willing to top the offer, meaning Leila Pereira has already decided that they will match any offer from Brazilian clubs to secure the signing of Danilo. And the tendency is even stronger for him to go to Europe, okay? Yeah, so Flamengo is out of the picture according to ESPN, and Palmeiras is still dreaming about the return of the midfielder, okay? Danilo is also on Manchester United's radar, according to ESPN. So Manchester United is also interested in signing the midfielder Danilo. Yeah, it's that situation, guys. There are a lot of people wanting to sign the player. He's going to increase in value. Obviously, with Manchester United getting into the deal, it drives the price up, right? It increases the player's value even more. Flamengo Championship. Palmeiras, I've already told you, Palmeiras has the advantage in this fight because they're the player's former club, right? They also have an easier time negotiating with Botafogo, who just negotiated Alexander Barbosa's transfer. Since they're not from the same city, Botafogo's rivalry is only national. There was that situation in 2023 where Botafogo lost the title to Palmeiras and then they made accusations, right? In 2024, Botafogo won, but in 2023, Textor using AI saying that Palmeiras, all that fighting there involving Textor, Botafogo, and Palmeiras, but it was all for nothing, right, guys? It was all for nothing because it's not a local rivalry and it doesn't have the kind of rivalry that comes from Flamengo and Palmeiras fighting over so many titles. There were 3 Libertadores for Flamengo in 7 years, 4 finals, 2 Libertadores for Palmeiras in 7 years, 3 finals. There were 3 Brazilian championships, if I'm not mistaken, for each side in 7 years, 2 Copa do Brasil titles for Flamengo, right? I think 1 or 2 for Palmeiras, 3 Super Cups for Flamengo, 1 for Palmeiras, man. Cara, Flamengo and Palmeiras have won many consecutive titles. We joke they're Cheiro Verde, they call us Cheirinho, but honestly, Flamengo and Palmeiras both look like title contenders. It's just playful banter. Those guys were runners-up last year, but both look like title contenders. They're the teams that are the most successful teams of the century, the teams that have won everything recently and have created this huge rivalry, right? But Palmeiras and Botafogo were really only rivals in 23 and into 24. When Flamengo stepped out of the spotlight a bit, they won the Copa do Brasil in 24, but stepped out a little in 23 because they weren't doing so well, right? With Vitor Pereira, with São Paulo, and then this rivalry with Botafogo was created for about a year, there with Palmeiras, 2 years at most, but that's already over. So, Palmeiras has this advantage because the guy played there, started there, and Botafogo had already negotiated Barbosa with them. And they don't have that same heated rivalry with Palmeiras that they do with Flamengo. It's a team from Rio de Janeiro, it's a local derby, it's a Carioca rival, so it's much easier for them to negotiate the player with Palmeiras than with Flamengo. It's that simple, okay? But I'll tell you guys honestly, even with this information from ESPN, I don't believe Flamengo is out of the picture. Flamengo is there, right? They're not going to start a bidding war. They're going to wait, see what happens. Flamengo is still in the mix. They're evaluating Caio Jorge as a possible signing, to sign him to help out in that area. So you have support there for Pedro in case Pedro can't play, or to give him some rest, right? Or another striker. There are a lot on the market, not that many, but there are quite a few available. Flamengo can sign a good striker. Flamengo has the budget to sign a good striker, even with the elimination from the Copa do Brasil, which causes losses for the club, right? For the club's finances. But I think Flamengo will prioritize a forward, and I would do the same, okay? If you ask me whether I prefer to sign Danilo or Luis Henrique, to spend 40 million on Danilo, spend a little more and sign Luis Henrique, or to spend 40 million on Danilo, I spend a little more and sign Luis Henrique, okay? To spend 40 million on Danilo, I add a little more and sign Luis Henrique. I think Luis Henrique would be like that. A difference maker. Flamengo really needs a winger. Flamengo has defensive midfielders right now, but there are players suspended, injured, and so on. But Flamengo has good defensive midfielders. There's Pulgar, Everton, Araujo. There's also Saul, who still needs to recover, who hasn't managed to play well yet. Not yet. This year for Flamengo. There's De La Cruz, who's recovering but isn't playing yet. There's the synthetic turf issue, but he's a great player and performs well. With Lucas Paquetá and Jorginho, Flamengo is well stocked with defensive midfielders. Be careful. Some of these midfielders were teammates and Danilo would be a backup. He doesn't want that. It doesn't mean that Flamengo needs it right now. A winger, I think a winger would fit well, especially since Flamengo is going to lose. Cebolinha is not going to stay at Flamengo, so I think Flamengo needs a winger, right? And this signing is going to be important. It would be important to sign Luis Enrique, but I think it's very difficult. They're asking 50 or 60 million if it was something to pay for. If you have to choose between Danilo and Luis Enrique, I say without hesitation that I prefer to sign Luis Enrique. I want to hear your opinions. In my opinion, to pay what you'd have to pay Botafogo for Danilo, right? Let Palmeiras sign him, so I don't think it's going to happen. He'll probably end up in Manchester or with some team in Europe after the World Cup. Yeah, to pay what Botafogo wants. I prefer to try to spend a little more and sign a great striker, a great center forward, a winger found by scouts, or sign a striker, a center forward found by scouts, and a winger like Luis Enrique. And then spend good money to sign a player like Luis Enrique, right? That's it. I invite you to follow, like, and share on all platforms. If you're on YouTube, I invite you to subscribe down below, turn on notifications by clicking the bell, and leave a like on the video. Thank you very much for your company. Red and black greetings. This is Flamengo. Thanks.